Welcome to Prepared for Parenthood, the podcast for hopeful, expectant, and new parents with little ones up to age 5. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Dueger, a psychotherapist, author, educator, parent coach, and married mother of 2. On this show, we'll discuss everything from the most up-to-date practicals of best supporting your young children, to thriving in relationship as a family, to more surprising topics around the psychology and development of babies from conception through age 5. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. I'm thrilled to have you here today. Welcome back to Prepared for Parenthood. Our guest today is Chelsea O'Brien, a mother, author, holistic practitioner, and modern healer. Having practiced women's health, reproductive, and integrative medicine for more than a decade, including studying with midwife Ina May Gaskin and working as a labor and delivery nurse at the University of California, San Francisco, Chelsea is currently an integrative nurse practitioner at the Morrison Center in New York City. As the author of 3 books, Mystical Motherhood, Fertile, and Alchemy of Becoming, as well as 2 forthcoming books, Chelsea is on a mission to bring conscious children into this world by helping to support women on their motherhood journey. Welcome, Chelsea.
Thank you.
You have a foot in both worlds. You're a nurse practitioner, and then you also have this thorough background in ancient wisdom traditions. Can you share a little bit about what that looks like and what your books have to say about that?
I feel like I was led, and it's been a development over time through kind of esoterics and then just really back to nature, which I'll talk about. But I was in a room one day and this teacher said, if the frequency of women changes, so will the entire human race. And when she said that, it felt like something dropped in my head. Just like, don't forget. What does that mean? Each word means something. If the frequency of women changes, so will the entire human race because they birth the children. So each of my books and each of the women I work with in the clinic is really about changing their frequency and helping them to go more into balance. And then also teaching them how to become better humans so that they can birth better humans. Through my first book, really focused on the moment of conception to the moment of birth, teaching women that within that time period, they produce everything for the child. But then if you're not prepared for that period, it doesn't matter. You can mess up those moments. You can never mess it up. But my recent books have been about teaching women how to return to their nature and what returning to their nature means and how they're out of their nature. And I help women in the clinic kind of find that. In this most recent book, I took the idea of feminism and I compared it to this phenomenon we're seeing of narcissism. And I don't mean narcissism like a diagnostic code, in the way that why are we seeing such an upheaval of desperation, manipulation, lying, competition within the human race? Why is this on every social media campaign? Why are we seeing it on all of our feeds? And is it propaganda? What is it? And I, in this book, have argued that this is women out of balance through the years. And I said, where did it come from? So this imbalance within the mental structure of everyone is an imbalance in nature. And I think it's one of the biggest problems we have on this planet is women being out of their nature. And I really brought it back to when did it happen? And there's a lot of parts to this book. But basically, and my argument is that feminism in its toxic form, I guess the word I'll say is desperate form. I don't like the word toxic. The survival that women had to go through to become like men created these personality parts of competition, of needing to survive, of needing to lie, of needing to be more manipulative in order to survive in a world where they were convinced that becoming a man is better than being a woman. And it's a hard argument to make in a world where everyone can argue that all these rights that we all wanted, the voting, the reproductive rights, the rights to our body, the rights to be seen, the rights to have land, all of these things. But there was a fight for that. And that fight for survival isn't in the feminine body. And I believe it took us so far out of our nature the sickness I'm seeing within the clinic, the physical sickness of autoimmune issues, of thyroid problems, of hormonal issues, of weight gain, all the physical things I deal with women on all these levels, the physical, the mental, the relationship issues. It's all girth, I believe, from women going out of their nature to compete, to become something they're not. And why don't they see their beauty in that femininity and the motherhood? Why is it not okay? So it's an interesting, I don't know. I'd love your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so I'm curious. It sounds like a systemic issue, right? It's not just some women are feeling this, but a lot of women are experiencing these issues. So, how did you specifically help them with this? And then, how do we as a society help shift so that there is a systemic change?
This took me my whole life to figure out. It's still in me. First off, if we're having all these physical, emotional, and spiritual issues and fertility issues, if we can just define it under one thing, is that women are out of their nature. And if I'm defining out of your nature, we're trying to become men and we're being convinced by something that being something that we're not is better. So we're fighting our nature. I'll give you many examples. I work in New York City and I see some of the most hardworking women I've ever seen in my life. I'm talking about women, they're programmed that job of 80 hours a week is so important. They'll get so sick, leave their children. Their children don't even know them. And they come to me. They don't know that the imbalance within their physical body is really that they left their children. So we come back to that. A lot of it is just having someone say to them very simply, do you think that the imbalance is because you may not actually want to do this, but you're conditioned to think that this is a better choice than also caring for your children? So it's a fight within a limit. We want these careers. I'm the same way. I'm not opposed to anything. And I don't think that the problem is working. Because if you look back into the history, women always work, right? We have always worked hard. I think the problem is when we work into survival, when we'll sacrifice our families, our space, ourselves to survive, to become something we think is better than what we are. And so I think this change is just going to happen one day. Just like a shift happens in culture, just like when feminism occurred and everyone went back to work. And that was just what culture did. I do believe that there may be a shift back. And I think that women will just see that there's a level of manipulation, not within themselves, but a manipulation of their nature occurring to them on a systemic level. And they'll get sick of being manipulated within the workforce and all these things. And they'll say, maybe my children are more important. I've done it. Maybe my resume is not as important. I enjoy just writing books here and there in between my pregnancies. And that's my passion. And if they do well or they don't do well, it doesn't matter to me because everyone can define their own success. It doesn't need to be defined by society or by something outside of us. If we define success for ourselves and can make that happen, then we're successful.
And how do you argue with clearly we've fought really hard for our rights in this country and countries around the world. And lots of women end up in situations where perhaps they end up being the sole provider for their family, or they're left from a relationship, or something happens where if they put more of a balance on, say, their family than on their career, they feel worried about not having the resources to meet those challenges. How do we incorporate all that, not necessarily lose rights or interest or ability to work, but also balance that? The balance family, I feel like, is a very challenging thing to do anyway, regardless of how much you're working or if you're a stay-at-home parent. So how do we help people feel more relaxed around those
Mm,
particular pieces?
That's the best question. And as I'm writing this book, I'm bringing it up to women and I'm saying, I see all these problems and I think I have an answer. And my only answer is women return to their nature and they ask the same questions as you. My sister, I told her, we got a problem. I'm on fire about this. We're not in our nature. Like, why are women becoming men? And she just went, we need to vote. We need rights. We need these things. I need to work. And she fought me. And I was thinking in my mind, laughing, like, I'm not fighting it. I am a feminist. I've done it all. But I know that there's something out of its nature. It doesn't necessarily make me feminine to do all those things. So I don't have all those answers, but I can point out the problems in the world and say, the only solution I can think of for all of the women being physically ill is just to admit, is it perhaps that I'm not appreciating what a woman's power is, what a woman's intuition is, and that I'm disconnected from that power because someone told me that this power is more powerful? So I don't have answers for that group, and I don't think it will happen in their generation. I don't think that that family unit will change, but I do think there's a possibility that the next family unit could change. But if a woman's hardworking and she's gone through a divorce, and I've been through a divorce, it's hell. Do you have answers for them? I don't, but I do think that if they can teach their children, it's okay to be a woman. This is what a woman is. I don't think anyone really knows what a woman is. What is a woman in her femininity? And there's not that many people that know what that is because so many people are not in their nature. And then as women are not in their nature, men are not in their nature because there's nobody in their heart to bring them back home. So if women in their nature are in their heart, they're always connected to divinity. And as a result of that, they're highly intuitive. And as a result of that, they can't be manipulated from outside sources because they know who they are. So a
I'm
woman in her
following you.
nature is the opposite of what I was saying of the narcissistic culture. And I believe that's why they're going head to head now at each other, because these parts of the personality, this desperation and manipulation and all of these things that we see so common in relationships now, I don't remember that being such a big deal when I grew up. Why is it happening at this level? I think there's a level of exhaustion within the culture because everyone is a man. There's nobody bringing us back home. So let's say 5% of the women read this book and 5% say, I agree. This feels okay. I can finally have someone who says, it's okay to be a woman. It's okay to be a mother. It's okay to give it up. I'm safe and I'm successful according to my own self to be who I am, to raise my children. And I have the ability to do that. And so I can't. And then maybe 5% more do. And then maybe the genes change. And then it's okay. You're actually successful and you're not embarrassed because there's a lot of stay-at-home moms, they're embarrassed. I know that they don't feel creative. They don't feel successful. They don't feel like that's enough. And so how do you have a balance between being with your children, being connected to your femininity? And I think that the shift will be very slow and then maybe it'll be very big.
So, in your actual practice, how do you help these women who come in, they're working 80 hours a week, they're depleted, they're struggling with health challenges, we're waiting for the generational fast before we can potentially shift back to a space where the feminine is appreciated and honored? What can we do now to help women in this space when they're struggling still with it?
When the autoimmune is going up and when the thyroid's at it, the hormones, oh my gosh, every single day I see a patient and let me give you a couple examples and they're both about the neck. And I'm going to bring up the neck because the neck is where the heart and the mind are disconnected. So typically when somebody comes to me with a neck problem, they're like, my throat hurts, right? Why does my throat keep hurting? It's such a simple things, or they have such fatigue or what's going on. And I can pinpoint because I'm very intuitive where it's coming from. So one woman came to me, she's 80 hours. They gave her a raise and a big bonus to be a big manager at the law firm. They gave her a dream job after she had her baby. All right. And she was so excited for her dream job that she gave up the baby to go to the job. And I said, are you happy? She says, my child doesn't know me. I don't know myself. I walk in the door. She doesn't like me. And my throat is hurting and I'm absolutely exhausted. I can't talk. I can't speak anymore. And it goes on and on. And so I said, what are you not saying? What's going on in your life? And in her case, her mother-in-law had moved in her home to take care of her child in her place. And so her mother-in-law was taking her energy. It's a lot of the time, There's something in their life that's taking their energy or making it so they can't see the truth. They'd come to me for quick fixes for problems that are much bigger than they can see. And it takes a little bit of time. So if everybody's wearing red glasses and they're coming to me and they're like, I have this one problem, I just need you to fix this problem and then my life is going to be better. And so when I show her, it's really not about your throat, it's really not about this, it's really about your mother-in-law living in your house. And you go into her trauma and she explains to me that her grandma took care of her and abused her. So now she's left her child to work for 80 hours a week, 80 to 100, and leave her child. So her abuse is getting repeated in her own house and she can't speak up. But I can see the whole pattern within 15, 20 minutes, and it's generational. So she has to make the choice to jump off the train. And maybe in that visit, maybe she can just see for a second. She can take off her red glasses, blue glasses on her. She'll say, oh, that's my conditioning playing out. I'm just repeating the past. And I've been programmed from outside sources.
So for that particular person, she then needs to make a difficult choice to help save herself and return to her femininity, and also try to heal not just the wounds
Yeah.
in her own family system, but generationally heal all of those wounds, which is a tall order for anybody. What percentage do you think of people that you see are willing to leap off the train like that?
With each person and each woman, the best answer I have first, there's going to be a level of confusion. And then there's going to be a level of panic. Nothing can change in your life. It has to come from an outside force. Typically, the illness, the problem, the person that's taking the energy, an outside force will come in and force that person to change. I don't believe that most people have the inner balance and the inner knowing to be like, this is a change I have to make. So they have to be pushed from an outside force that will physically and emotionally and energetically switch them around. It won't be a choice they make. It's just going to happen to them or not. Just like an awakening happens to someone and another person doesn't have any awakening. They just live their life, right? So the physical illnesses I see, which I can go through many, is the opportunity to change. So most women, to even see that what I'm saying is true, they have to hit rock bottom and they have to get ill. They have to have the autoimmune issue. They have to have the spiritual collapse. They have to have the divorce. And all of these vitamins I'm taking, these yoga workouts I'm doing, the meditations I'm doing, everything that I'm doing, it's not working. So what is it? Because they're searching and then they're doctor hopping. I have many patients that have been like, I've been to 10 doctors. You've got to fix this. And I'm like, you're out of your nature. You're not a woman. That's the problem. And they're like, what? I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I've been told my whole life this is what I'm supposed to become. And then I say, take off your glasses and put on new ones. You can go as many places you want to try to fix this problem, but the problem is huge. It's an epidemic. And it's honestly probably the biggest problem we have on this planet because it's creating sick children. So I'll give you an example of what I told her, and then I'll give you an example of a woman who saw it. That woman, I said to her, get your mother-in-law out of your house because you need to create space. And until you have space, you cannot see the illness. Because when you have a space from work, when you don't have space from the people that are making you sick, you cannot see that there's another way of being. So the first step to anything is to create space, because from the space is the femininity. And I don't know why yet, but there's a need for space to see a different point of view. And an example of a woman that saw, let me give you that. She's a friend, but also a client, and she's really happy in motherhood. So she has an undergraduate degree from Columbia and a USC master's in business. She's no joke. She ran like $1 million company. She's very successful. And she's a stay-at-home mom now. Now she can because she has money saved, right? So don't get mad at her, but she can. So that's just her situation. And that's what she defines as success. And I said, how are you so happy being at home right now? Like, how are you not anxious to be working? How did you settle into just being with your kids and going to yoga and doing your things because you're able to do that? Now, this isn't for the single moms. And I've been a single mom many years. I get all of it. I said, what made you? And she goes, you've forgotten, Chels. I'm so sick. Don't you remember when my whole world fell apart and my parents sued me and I got autoimmune disease and I couldn't move my fingers and my hair was falling out. And I was so tired that I couldn't move and I was sleeping and I was shaking and I was having anxiety attacks every single day. So I had to stop everything. I had to stop working. I had to stop everything in my life and healed for 3 years. And that space gave me the ability to see that I was actually happy being a mom. And I said, wow, I forgot about that. So she taught me there's been many like that. It wasn't until their rock bottom where they had to be forced. And it could be that the United States had the war. It could be that we have a collapse of economy. And we don't know what ever could happen. We had COVID happen. We never know what's next. So when shifts happen in humanity, they happen fast. And there could be something that no one's prepared for. And they're going to be like, where do I find my identity again? Since I've tried to create identities in all these outside sources and they're not fulfilling me.
I love the slowing down, stepping back, reassessing, and making the changes that need to be made. Chelsea, can you share a little bit about your own experience of becoming a mom? I know you're a mom 3 times now and one fairly recently. Can you share what your experience of moving into that phase of your life has been like and how you've been balancing all the challenges?
I'm my own story. I was out of my nature. And then these last two books is my one story about returning to my nature and all the things I had to have happen to me to return to it. Then how do you go back to it? Let me give you an example. I get my dream job as I have my baby, my new baby. Okay. My dream job, best center in Manhattan, like clientele, dressing up, everything you think it would be. I've waited for 30 years for this. I've been dreaming of it since I was a little girl, but I got a little boy now. And I've also been dreaming of him. So how do I balance the two? And which one's better? Which one's worse? So I try to do this dream job for 3 days a week. And it isn't what I thought. So it's the same story of everyone who comes to me and they say, hey, I'm a lawyer and my dad wanted me to become a lawyer and I'm running the firm and I just don't know. My hair's falling out and I've gained 25 pounds and I can't find a partner. Boom, right? Then the lady, my daughter doesn't know me. How do you find the balance? So this place I worked 2.5 days, is it worth it? I'm always questioning. Can I make it better? Can I work from home? Will that? Absolutely, because it's hard for me. I have to be in the clinic to understand these things and I do it as a balance, but I've also taken so much space in my life. Like I took 3 or 4 years before that where I didn't work and I was just with my kids. I did absolutely nothing. I don't think I did a thing for years. It was the hardest identity for me to lose. And I've lost a lot of identities. I've lost the meditator. I've lost the healer. I've lost all the identities we take on to become or understand the world, right? I lost them. And then the one thing I did hold on to was career. And I was wondering why. And that's what these books are about. And a lot of it, I believe, is that we are programmed that success and independence comes from financial success. Now, I'm financially successful beyond my career. So for me, it's also research for my books and for creativity. I'm very lucky. So I can define success separately for me, for myself. But as a culture, we define success based on how much money we make. Men define success based on finances. And so when we said, okay, let's define success as man defines success, we're like, okay, for us to become independent from a man who defines what's successful, which is money, we have to become financially successful. And that's what we have done. And we have done it really well. And now there's a lot of women that are financially successful, a lot that are not. But now I'm on a mission to redefine what success is. So what if one day it switches and all of a sudden it's super successful to raise children? Could you imagine if we were programmed, if that was the culture?
So it sounds like a big part of the shift is really to a more collaborative experience versus a competitive experience, where the village mindset of people having families and coming together to support each other, making sure that everyone's needs get met versus just a few people's needs get met. And that in itself is a very feminine way of thinking. So it's supporting that mindset.
Yeah. And I did this most recent book in 27 seconds because 2027 is a big year on a spiritual level. But in each of the sections, I ask these questions, the same questions you're asking, because I'm not a stay-at-home mom writing this book. I'm a woman that's traveled and has education, questioning, and I'm also not religious. So you can't put me in any category. I'm just a curious woman wondering why I got a divorce. And really, it was my divorce that put me on this mission to understand, how did my family just fall apart? Was it me? Was it him? And a lot of times that's when the narcissistic culture begins, is it's him. He's the narcissist. Well, if we take a minute and look at the way that we're out of our own nature, and maybe if I had been more in my nature, I couldn't say that. And I had to take responsibility. So for me, that was the moment that made me realize something's wrong in my nature. Let me look into that. And for other women, it may be the physical. It may be that they can't get pregnant. It may be that they lose all their money and they can't take care of their kid. Like, all these questions go back to, we're not in our nature. We don't feel secure. And one of the biggest questions I asked in this book that really was the hardest section to write was about security. And I was thinking, why are women so insecure? Where does insecurity come from? And this book was written with a spiritual teacher. His name is Abdi Electricite. And so he was logical, beyond intelligent. And so when I would get stuck, I would call him, because I'm very feminine in my heart, trying to figure it out. And I needed a logical male. I asked him, why are we also so insecure? And he said, where does security come from? What do you need to be secure from? I was like, I don't know. And he said, if you go back in time, women would pick one man, just one, and they would hope that man didn't disappoint them. And they would be with that man so they could raise a family. And over time, that's the nature of woman. Just like the ovum picks one sperm. Sometimes there's twins, and then that's oval chaos. But one sperm, we don't go and pick all these different sperms. And our culture now is so different. Now, women, because we're so independent, I can do this much easier alone. I'm very capable of doing it alone.
Most of the questions that you're posing do not have easy answers.
I don't have these answers. I'm pointing out all the problems in the world and
Mhm.
saying that I don't have all the solutions.
Yeah. So if you could offer your highest advice to expectant and new parents, given all this information, what would you offer to them?
I would say go back to my original teachings. The moment you conceive that baby to the moment you give birth to that baby, everything you think, everything you feel, everything you do, everything you eat is the programming that baby really receives. And afterward, you're just trying to make them not cross the street and get hit. That's what I feel like. They're intelligent little beings. If you don't have space anywhere else in your whole life, if you could take space in that time, I think that would be the most valuable time. And I do think just taking space from anything, eliminate anything from your life that doesn't serve your nature. And that might be small thing, and then maybe big things.
We've been speaking today with Chelsea O'Brien. She's a mother of three, an author, prolific author. She's got 2 more books coming out soon. She's a holistic practitioner and a modern healer as well. Thank you so much for being here today, Chelsea. It's been really nice to see you and have this conversation with you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to the Prepared for Parenthood podcast today. I hope you found this episode educational, informational, and conversational, and that you'll join me again for another episode soon. If you enjoyed listening to today's podcast, I'd very much appreciate if you would rate, review, and subscribe. If you're interested in more information related to today's podcast, or are looking for parent coaching or courses, you can find my information in the show notes or online at preparedforparenthood.com.